if someone's never heard of transpersonal psychology, how would you describe it to them? How would you introduce it to them?
Yeah. So I would say, like, look, it opens up to kind of these like extreme or the outer edges of human consciousness and experience. It has much more of an openness to those and exploring them than traditional therapies do. So to get into more specifics of that, something like Stan and Christina Grof came up with is this idea of spiritual emergencies. So things like psychotic breaks, anxiety attacks, midlife crises, right? All these kind of things that we think of as like acute mental illness. From a transpersonal framework, those are considered through the lens of, is this sort of a potential opening into a higher state of consciousness? So, to give a personal example, that I talked about, like the morning glory seed experiences, right? Leading up to those, my own fear of death was at an all-time high. I was struggling to kind of function in life. I was noticing myself so preoccupied with thoughts about death that I was missing things I usually would be attentive to in my life. And so I could look at that, right, as this kind of like crisis, but it initiated that level of stress. Was on one level was a way of me realizing I could not continue to live within the framework I was in, and I needed to have significant movement. And so that emergency becomes an emergence, where you kind of emerge out of it as something new with a greater perspective. So like what Stan Grof gets into a lot is this idea of the birth process, and that we can look at a lot of our life as a repetition of the birth process at higher levels. Which then, when you look at that, we can have these stages where right before birth, right, you're having the uterine contractions, which are not going to feel comfortable on the fetus, right? And so then from there, it's essentially getting forced out into an opening that sure doesn't look big enough to fit a head. And so that's going to come with potentially strangulation, suffocation. It's a very unpleasant experience, but at the end of it, the child emerges and is open to this spacious light experience, and then that's immediately followed by a connection with the mother, right? So that kind of pattern of being in a sort of stable, comfortable state, that comfortable state starting to kind of close in and feel like it's no longer tenable, and then sort of a push into what feels like there's no escape, eventually to emerge. That's kind of a pattern that, like, transpersonal framework, I'd say we tend to be attentive to.
And so I was listening to a talk, I think by Stan Grof, and who described transpersonal psychology really in a cool and beautiful way, I found. And he said that it was the science of the soul, which I found I kind of had to pause the video and then just think on that.